I'd like to thank everyone again. In the morning session, we had a very beautiful presentation. And first of all, I'd like to thank SteelOrbis and others who gave me this chance. Protectionism is probably the last thing everybody wants to hear, especially in steel industry, in front of the news coming every day. I'd like to share shortly my opinions about it. In the presentation, especially how we came to this point. What activated the increase of this protectionism? Anti-dumping subvention interrogations, and what caused them in frame of these interrogations, and what kind of tools we have, what kinds of threatenings we have. What should we expect after 2020 and afterwards? I'll try to tell all of these. Trade politics measurements are not foreign to the sector. Since 1986, anti-dumping measurements have been implemented. They started in 1986. Trade politics and anti-dumping measurements, subventions and safeguard. These are three main tools. Section was added later to them. Anti-dumping and subvention are investigating the unfair practices, whether or not you sold illegally. In subvention, on the other hand, other government supports are interrogated. For example, in Korea, galvanized steel, or from another country, another product. CVD is practiced globally, except from some developed countries. Except from anti-dumping, it's practiced without subvention. Steel is, as you all know, is a common suspect of these interrogations. When you look at interrogations since 1995, this presentation shows all the anti-dumping interrogations. In subvention, about base metals and products, 2 times more than chemicals were suited. The most anti-dumping's main interrogation topic is about base metals and base metal products, and steel products are targeted in frame of these anti-dumping interrogations, and especially in last years, there was an increase. You see the American measurements left, and in this presentation, of course, the USA focus is a little bit high. And at first, we want to give examples from American measurements. I'd like to say at first, the presentation's USA focus is a little bit high, and right, you see the global anti-dumping measurements. Since 2011, there's a serious increase since 2011. So how did we come to this point? Everything started with American president, but not the president you guessed, with Obama. It started with Obama. Obama was trying to add USA to TPP agreement to be able to find support. and the local producers trying to, and Obama wanted to make it easier for participators. And after these implementations, he took some steps so that after these legal implementations, which make everything easier for participators, AFE's practices could be used much more easily, much more practically. Some settings were much more easily made. As a result of them, when you look at steel, before Trump in 2015, we were facing big legal cases. First for cold plate and later on galvanized plates. There were just investigations. And then Trump came. And he make it impossible for me to buy. I don't forget his motto, especially in his debates with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was accusing him of some Chinese privileges, but then he told him, make it impossible for me to buy. And even in the campaign period, it was one of the two biggest topics, migration and trade. It had serious impacts on both of the campaigns. To be able to understand Trump's policies, you have to look at Trump's team. Wilbur Ross, for example. These are all people related to steel. Wilbur Ross is a very rich investor. Before being trade minister, one of his projects was like Bethlehem Steel, his company. He unified all of these companies and sold to Arsenal. Robert Lighthizer, you see, right? U.S. trade representative, you say. It's like a ministry. Both of them, both Stephen Wong and Robert Lighthizer, they were lawyers. They always have been lawyers since 1980s. One of them is at the minister position, Robert Lighthizer, and other is the helper position, assistant position. They are now the decision-making team. When you look at all the other actors too, you see that Nikor's old CEO, even though he doesn't have a formal position right now, especially during the campaign, he was one of the biggest consultants of Donald Trump, Peter Navarro, and even it's told that he was one of the biggest supporters behind Make America Great Again. That was Dan DiMicco and Peter Navarro, then you see left. Especially against China, he was very on the other side. And the result is not very surprised. Even before being selected, there were signals. And right after he came, as soon as possible, right in January, he drew back from TPP. Obama just invested in. But Obama's changes also stayed there. Both Pacific Agreement went to trash bin, and there was a drawback from TPP. There's no NAFTA anymore, US-Canada trade agreement since May 2017. Negotiations with European Union stopped. Section 232, the countervailing duties started since in March 2018, and step by step, countervailing duties started. And of course, the only maybe blocking organ was the World Trade Organization's appeal of court, and appeal of court's promotions were blocked. There aren't enough judges in the World Trade Organization for the appeal of court, because Donald Trump blocked it. Despite the 5% taxes, there were always attempts for more and more anti-dumping measurements and more taxes. First of the implementations were anti-circumvention. Since the taxes came, no steel product was opened in USA except, of course, one of them is, while there was 20% protection, it was hard to show any reason for another anti-dumping product. The investigations just increased afterwards. For example, for China, another steel anti-dumping measurement was brought. And the Vietnam producers sold to China. They started to sell to China. And as a result, Chinese origin galvanized steel and the same measurements afterwards were also taken against Vietnam. And recently against Costa Rica, Guatemalan, Malaysian, South African, and Arabian Emirates producers in August 2019. Another implementation started, and these implementations will be broadened. Another, again, on force, but new implementations. Particular market situation, special market situation. In anti-dumping measurements, the topic we focus on is there a difference between inner market and the outer? While pricings are defined, they say, no, the market is not suitable. Of course, the translation of it is we can't come to a solution. We want to set something, arrange something. First, in the standard, first in the large diametric pipes, then in standard pipes. They created their own implementations, and on first place for construction steel, they do the same thing. One took 9%, one took 1% addition. Now they claim the Turkish market is not appropriate, that the Turkish market is not suitable. So what do they claim? They claim that slab producers are under government control. There are subventions in Turkey, and these claims don't have a background. Especially for pipe products, we'll see it in every investigation. The other products, flat products and long products, there's a very big pressure whether or not it will be used on these products. One of the other reasons is indeed because they couldn't get the anti-dumping measurements they always wished for Turkey. That was in case of Turkey. Despite a measurement in CVD, which came in 2015, it happened, For Mexico also there were measurements. In Turkey also another measurements came under enforcement. Also in HRC the same were practiced. In Turkey producers got the least yeah. Compared to other countries, it was lessened, but it kept on. Local producers were under big pressure about it. They could never get the big anti-dumping measurements they had wished for. We see the sharement, the increase, we see the increase, the drawback until 1930s and 1940s. All of them are really important investigations, especially the safeguard implementation of European Union. But with the activation of USA, all the other investigations came afterwards. And European Union's investigations are the most important of them. It influences 40 million metric tons of another export. Safeguard measurement was depending on American measurement. In Canada, Egypt, Morocco, it was done. Only in Turkey, there wasn't any measurements. Besides Canada, only in some products they were activated. At the same time, so in the other markets, the products were sent to. In Canada, Malaysia, Australia, we face another very intensive anti-dumping measurement processes. The situation is frustrating right now. This is Turkey's export. These data are Turkey's export. In the last 10 years, in measure of the many markets, most of them are safeguard. Now, with measurements, they are stopped. So what are the expectations for the new period? Safeguard investigations continue 4 years long, and at the end of 4 years, they have to end. But Section 232 doesn't have an end. We turn back to USA again, because the first step was taken by USA. And in a quick way, these measurements can be just withdrawn. We have to look at the US elections next year. These were 3 key states for the elections. You see the vote differences. In Pennsylvania, 68,000 votes. In Michigan, 11,000 votes. In total, with a difference around 100,000, Trump won. Hillary Clinton could win if she had got these states. These states defined everything. And for the first time, they voted for a Republican candidate. So these sayings about trade, all of his sayings were very important, so key for these states. So are the American content with these results? So what happened at the end? Now we see the hirings in production sector. Yes, there's an increase with the coming of Trump. But on the other hand, and Trump is really proud of And he always talks about how the unemployment was decreased. But it's a production sector. It turned back when we see. And in other states, it's also, but especially these free states I wanted to show, and it has an agricultural side. Many countries also, just like USA, they did the same against USA. WET was influenced a lot by it, and USA's agricultural export were decreased. And to be able to overcome it, Trump prepared another package to be able to decrease the losses. Now, Iowa, Minnesota, and Michigan are states where agricultural things play really big role. So, are the steel producers happy? Are they content with the situation? When we see the shares of Nucor and USS, we first see the increase in the production, in the shares. The shares just increased a lot. And then Section 232 came. We see another increase. But now U.S. Steel drew back from 45 US dollars to the level before Trump, quickly. If it's true to see New York SE as an intent, then this is the result. It's not very possible to say his implementations became efficient as a result of it. I want to predict so. Trump will probably not be elected in 2020 if he is not impeached, of course. So if he'll not be impeached, who will come? I'd like to explain a little bit the Democratic candidates on the other side. Joe Biden, one of the four candidates from the other side. He is for common trade. He supported TPP in NAFTA, and he doesn't use tariffs as a tool, and he's on the front side compared to the other candidates. Elizabeth Warren is against common trade. She was just a supporter of Section 232, and she's against TTAs. Democrats are much more protectionist. We have to leave Trump other side. Elizabeth Warren is a typical Democrat. Bernie Sanders, just like Elizabeth Warren, against common trade, is a supporter of Section 232, and he's against TTAs. And in fourth road, he comes with a good momentum. There's also possibility he can make a surprise like Obama. Pete Buttigieg, he's against Section 232. He was in the municipality. He comes from that background. He's against NAFTA. We can have a hope that they can take Trump's implementations back. Since 1990s and 2000s, it might be familiar with you what America did. We lived the same in 2001. First, in the year George W. Bush was elected, safeguard measurements. There were safeguard measurements, and in the background, Canada had a safeguard measurement too. In August 2002, just like after Trump's election, what we experienced, a similar chain reaction. US, European Union, and all other countries also had their own measurements in 2002. 2003, on November 10, World Trade Organization, but cancelled these measurements. The trade was blocked in that period. And in 2003, all of the countervailing duties were lifted. We foresaw that Trump wouldn't be elected, by the way, except from him. We also looked at the four candidates, but the most important of all, besides all of these wild, wild west measurements, the only organization who can cancel the wrong implementations and wrong measurements is World Trade Organization. As long as it can do its duty, I believe we can come to a healthy and efficient solution, to an effective end. Just politicians and decision makers. That was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions for Mr. Bülent? I have one about the WTO. We've known that President Trump isn't very big about the World Trade Organization, and he's doing his best to all but dismantle it. So, how could we see that the WTO can reach a decision about that? Basically, this was one of the expectations. Will there be a solution coming out of the WTO? That was one of the questions that was asked. Unfortunately, it did not. But once Trump established Section 232 tax, some of the countries, including our country, objected. And they filed a complaint to the World Trade Organization saying that this isn't a valid countermeasure. And America has won today, has won that case today against Airbus and Boeing. So in actuality, America is making use of the WTO as it sees fit or as it serves their purposes. But this is a positive development. Trump, who has withdrawn from many agreements, could have withdrawn from the World Trade Organization as well, but he didn't. What he did instead was that he accepted the decisions that served his purposes, and we believe that the next president won't be doing anything like withdrawing from the World Trade Organization. So any other questions? First of all, I would like to make one comment. You've mentioned 1995, and I believe that it's been 20 years since the Singapore case, and I would like to thank everybody involved in that process because it was of great benefit to us. It helped us a great deal. And what I want to ask is about something that we've mentioned and Typhoon Bey mentioned, and we're talking about this concept of free trade, but I believe that this concept won't have any meaning going forward. And what we should be talking about is fair play. So this is the reality of our life. In the international arena, if we were to maintain our presence, this should be one of our priorities. So, with all your experience, what would you suggest to companies within this framework and in terms of being ready for the changes and the transformation and for maintaining their success? Thank you, Uğur Bey, first of all, for your thanks. Since we believe that we're doing our job, so thank you, it was a great honor. Yes, the investigations will continue. And as I first started my profession, we would see Europe versus America, but there are 23 countries that we are directly working with. From Malaysia, from Brazil, 23 countries. And we've been a party to investigations from all of these countries. So it's now very difficult to guess and foresee what will come from which side. But of course, although we are receiving good results from these investigations and good rates, Turkey also has a competitive market. There is no dumping. And whatever dumping that is being decided upon is basically manufactured out of thin air. But the records that are being kept, those are crucial because you have very little time during investigations, almost as brief as 30 days. During this time, you have to gather and deliver the data of 1.5 years. And in the analysis of the processes, you need to consider the prices of other countries in other markets. And always selling from high prices so as to not participate in dumping is not feasible. So you need to research and analyze the prices in other markets. And you need to be well versed in the rules of the and the technical aspect of these things. When you talk about it as selling at a reasonable amount, it sounds simple. But when you look at the cost, compare it with average costs of a year. And during times where costs fluctuate, your costs can be below the minimum limit. So you need to be able to predict those things and be ready for those things. Are there any other questions for Bülent Bey? I guess not. Thank you very much once again.